Let's try it. Sorry. Welcome everyone to this evening's monthly program from Chesapeake Valley Audubon Society. We have some quick announcements here before we get officially started, but we're really glad to have all of you here. Tonight, as you probably saw out in the foyer and in the press releases, etc., you saw that Lou Skavnicki of the Master Naturalist is going to be sharing a little bit about the Master Naturalist program this evening. If I can get the slide to keep going.
Just click into the blue.
Click into the blue. Just click again.
So while Kristen is working on the details, I'm the current president of the organization. We have a class every year. Limits to 20 people. There's a poster board out front with some information. You can pick up some brochures. Our class starts in March. Registration ends January 21st. Let's see, there's a fee for the class. $300. You can apply for a scholarship. And if you word your application for your scholarship correctly, you might be awarded a scholarship for half of that. There are 62 hours of training and 30 hours of volunteer time required to complete your certification in 1 year. If you can't, you can always complete your training that you missed the next year. For example, you're busy on a Saturday that there's a class. You find the class in another chapter within the state, and I think there are 6 or 7 other chapters. You can go to that chapter and take the class that you missed, and it counts towards your certification here. All of your volunteer hours have to be completed within the state of West Virginia. You can go to some of the neighboring states for training if you miss a class and you can't get it here. You can go to Maryland has a couple chapters, and Virginia has a couple chapters. There are several master naturalists here in the audience. If you could raise your hand so you can see who they are. If you have any questions, any one of us should be able to answer your questions. Go to the website. There's a QR code on our display board out there. You can get as much information as you will need from the website. We have the coordinating committee of the Master Naturalist is composed of about 10 people. We have a monthly meeting. We plan things and we, do those business things that a little organization does. I don't know what else I can tell you. Does anybody have any questions right now? All right, thank you.
I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful community of people. And if you love the natural world and you like hanging out with other people who love the natural world, it is a wonderful, wonderful group. So highly recommend it. And they do great work. All right. So I'm going to now, if I can do this, I'm going to go back to find the picture. There should be a public Most importantly, PBS has a new member of the family. This is Amy. Amy Moore Thomas, like she's still Amy Moore to me. Still learning to add the Thomas. So Amy has been with PBIS for many, many years, and Christian is her husband, son of Carolyn and Bruce back there. And they just had little baby, almost said Lena. They already had Lena a couple of years ago. This is baby Rowan. So Rowan was just born on Monday morning, and he will be coming home in the next few days. So yeah, so just the big PBIS news for now. All right, and then we were supposed to do the Master Naturalist thing. Sorry to be out of order. And now we're back on track. Excellent. So birdseed sale, the first one is Saturday. So I know I was talking to some of you who are already planning to be there. One special thing at 9 o'clock, Casey Walters, our Associate Director of Conservation and Operations, is going to be talking about birding for science in your backyard. So while you're enjoying the birds in your backyard and feeding the birds in your backyard, she's going to talk about how you can record your observations and share that with Cornell, Audubon, and other organizations for community science for the greater good, to share your data so that those organizations can track data, see trends of populations, etc. So that's gonna be at 9, and then the official sale starts at 10. And then the second sale will be January 24th. So we're doing 2 sales this year. They all proceeds on those 2 dates will benefit Potomac Valley Audubon and support programs like this. So thank you in advance for checking out, going to our lovely friends, Sunny Meadows Garden Center. They're really wonderful partners to PBAS. Also, quick note, we are still accepting applications or registrations for Thanksgiving break camp. For many parents, caregivers who have to work during Thanksgiving week, but your kids are home from school. It is a lovely way to get your kids off the couch. I've started a campaign to get the kid off the couch. It's my own personal mission in life right now. Separate the kid from the couch. So this year we're doing it on Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving break camp. It's for grades 1 through 6, and there are also opportunities for counselors in training. If your child has been a counselor in training in previous years, they are eligible to be a counselor in training here. So we're only doing it at Cool Spring for now. Hopefully if registration goes off the charts, we're gonna go to Yankauer too, but for right now, it's looking like it will just be at the Cool Spring Preserve. Quick FYI for hunting season. Hunting season is upon us. Main firearm season begins the week of Thanksgiving. So right now it's just bow hunting, but we do have some implications for our own nature preserves throughout the month of December, as well as Thanksgiving week. So this outlines where there is hunting, where there is not hunting. The biggest one for us is Eidolon out in Morgan County. Hunting is allowed, and that is something that was put in the donor's restriction. She said, you must allow hunting to take place on this property because you wanted to contribute to the food for her neighbors. So we do allow hunting at Eidolon during the season, and it is actually prioritized over hiking just for safety. So we do allow hiking, but it is very limited during hunting season. Every date is outlined on our website, so I encourage you to look at the website for details. We are launching a couple of fundraising campaigns. This is our 2025 annual report. It is at the printer as we speak. I love this picture. So it is being launched. We're going to do an email launch at the end of this week, and then we will be sending out our annual reports and annual appeal in early December. So you can look forward to that. Also a huge thank you to anyone and everyone who participated in the auction, either donated things to sell or buying things that other people donated. Or if you were one of those people that is baking a pie or other baked good that brought in hundreds of dollars, there's a $200 pie out there. It must be a really good pie. So thank you so much for your contributions. For that event raised about $14,000 in the end. So huge thank you for that. And then also huge thank you to our lovely Sundogs B&B for hosting the fall fundraiser that just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. So that raised about the same amount of money as well. So yeah, really wonderful folks who help PBAS out through organizing the auction, organizing events like Carolyn and Bruce and Peggy and David worked really tirelessly on the fall event as well, the festival, but that's another F, right? All right, and just a reminder, we do not have a December program meeting here at the Bird Center, but just as an FYI, we will be at the holiday parade in Shepherdstown on Church Street. This year's parade is December 9th, sorry.
Oh, Dave.
It's
December sixth?
It's 6, Saturday.
It's always the first Saturday, so if Saturday is the sixth, the first Saturday is the sixth, thank you. It's at 9:30 to 11 a.m. So, hopefully you can join us there as well. It's very fun. You can deck out, wear silly antlers or whatever gets you happy. Great. And then the next monthly program is going to be happening in January. And PBS staff and colleagues are going to be here to share with you the accomplishments of what happened in 2025. It was a pretty crazy year, really good in the end, but some definite challenges throughout. But we are in a very, very fortunate position to be a very resilient organization, and we were able to end on a really good note. So thank you all for that. So this is this year's staff, the 2025 staff photo. So we'll be presenting just what happened in 2025 and thanking various people for their help. All right, and now at the moment you've been waiting for, Jane Gamble is here. And Jane is an amazing photographer, as you will see. She's an award-winning wildlife photographer whose work has appeared in national magazines and newspapers. She's a volunteer digital content provider for the National Park Service, and her photos are used by various federal, state, and local agencies to promote wildlife awareness and appreciation. The Audubon Society and Cornell Lab of Ornithology have all recognized Jane's work, and her photos have been featured in calendars for the Department of State. Department of State, Virginia, I think we used to work.
It's the federal.
Oh, Department of.
Yep.
State. Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources, Patuxent National Wildlife Refuge, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Jane is also a passionate gardener with a focus on wildlife-friendly practices. Her previous garden in Alexandria, Virginia was featured in the Washington Post. So you are going to be so treated to amazing photography by Jane Gamble. So Jane, come on up, thank you.
I'm gonna just try to speak without the microphone. Is this okay for everybody? Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, great. Yes, I can, hopefully I can project. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm Jane Gamble, and I'm excited to be here this evening to have the opportunity to talk to you about creating a bird-friendly garden. And hopefully, actually, all the work is going to be carried by my photos themselves, and the birds are going to be taking the lead on showing you what they're looking for in a bird-friendly garden, a place that makes them feel welcome and supported. So when we create bird-friendly gardens, we're actually doing a lot for ourselves as well. A garden is just a garden, it's a static thing, but when you bring birds into it, you're bringing in color and movement. You're bringing in the seasonality of the different birds that are migrating through. The song and the sound of those birds, there's some of them are you know, they're just there temporarily as they're flying by, and others are there with us year round. And that's that continuity and the variety of bird song that for me just brings so much life to my garden. It's just so much more than just having a bunch of plants when I've got music. And then in my mind, the third major thing that we get when we bring birds into our garden, when we make them feel safe and give them a place to nest, is that extraordinary gift of new life. I know I'm just thinking about Carolyn and Bruce with their new baby, their new grandbaby, but it's, you know, especially when you have kids and grandchildren and neighbors' kids who you can share the sight of a robin's nest and those eggs, and to watch those eggs hatch, and to see the parents feeding the babies, and then to see them fledge, and that whole like incredible circle of life. It's so beautiful. And I definitely feel, for me personally, that I mean, what's more important to me even than the garden are the birds that come into my garden. So we'll talk about some of the things we can do to make our gardens welcoming to birds. One is the food sources, year-round food sources. Another are sources of water. And finally, again, that shelter and safe places to raise their young. And all of these photos that you've just seen, this actually was this mourning dove And there's actually two babies here. There's a baby here, the little bump, the baby, and the second one here. And this morning Deb was raising her young in an arbor above our garden in Alexandria. So I feel like I know them really well because I've watched them for so long. So let's talk about food, what we do to create a garden that's rich in food sources throughout the year. Sure, you can put out seed, but the garden itself can become a larder, and that's what I think we should probably all be focusing on for whole lots of reasons. You can figure out a way strategically to plant things that are going to be providing for birds, the various birds in your yard, through the various cycles of their life, through the various cycles of the seasons. And that's something to think about. So first we can talk about burying bushes and burying bushes. And so this is a cedar waxwing. It's a juvenile cedar waxwing. And oh, can you hear okay?
No, I was just the lights.
Oh, yeah, do you wanna turn down the lights? I don't know if you can.
It shows.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know it's a little fluorescent-y, yeah. Thank you for saying that. So, oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
So I'm not a gardener, in fact, my husband is the one who walks.
Oh,
Oh, that's good. Okay.
The water, I
Perfect.
waters our house plants.
Mhm.
I don't even do that. So all the suggestions you're gonna give tonight, are they non-invasive native suggestions?
You'll see they're not, I'm not going to talk exclusively about native plants, although I will touch on the importance of planting natives in your garden. So, so this is a juvenile cedar waxwing, and I took this photo in a garden up in Maine in in Acadia. And I just took it this past fall. And, you know, I was loving this garden. It was just this beautiful structural garden. It was a very old garden. It had a magnificent canopy of evergreens in this mid-level of winterberry. And I was so taken with watching this flock of the cedar waxwings come in devouring berries that I was kind of losing sight of the garden itself. And when the birds flew off temporarily, I kind of stood back and really saw the role that these winterberry shrubs were playing in the garden. They were this gorgeous mid-level canopy. The color of some of them was already changing. On top of that, you had the berries, and then on top of that, you had the birds. And it really spoke to me about how the small trees and the multi-stem shrubs that you can get in the garden are adding, there's so much structure and importance to the garden itself. And you add in the berries, and you add in the blossoms that take care of pollinators, and then you're really adding something impactful to a garden. This I also just photographed up in Maine. It's a catbird on a mountain ash. And I don't know, I think in here the mountain ash need to be at a slightly higher elevation, but there is such a beautiful tree with this gorgeous fall color. It's a beautiful smaller tree. You can fit it into most gardens depending on the size, but I like small trees a lot in all gardens. If you can get them in there. And what I really liked about this photo is most catbirds are migratory. So right now, these berries that it's munching on, they're fueling its migration south for the winter. And I just like that idea that we're providing a packed lunch basically for birds that are on the wing. This is a juvenile yellow-bellied sapsucker, and it's on a magnolia pod. I don't know if you recognize that right away. Sometimes magnolias are such magnificent evergreen trees, the Magnolia grandiflora, but also there's the sweet bay magnolia, which is smaller, and I think that actually can fit into almost all gardens, and it also has the seed pods. We sometimes think of them just the flowers of the magnolia, but the seed pods are also highly desired by birds. I was just out at Blandy, the University of Virginia State Arboretum, and I was watching all sorts of birds in the magnolia trees there eating the berry pods. So magnolias are a fantastic tree. They're not always evergreen, depending on how cold the winter is. Sometimes they can lose their leaves, but they'll come back. But actually, magnolias are one of the trees that are on my list to get planted in our new garden here in Shepherdstown. So this has got a great, so this, of course, robin, this is holly berries. Oh my, the holly trees are so incredible. I love them. They're evergreen. They're providing shelter year round from the elements, fantastic nesting places. And we're talking about berries, not on the level of just a few hundred berries on a small shrub. We're talking about like tens of thousands of berries on a fully mature holly tree. And what a food source. This particular photo I took several years ago in Alexandria during an ice storm. And what I was watching out the window was this holly tree, and over 100 robins alighted in this tree and devoured those berries for over an hour. It was such a sight to see as this cold, wet ice was pouring down. They were just making such use of those berries, and it really sent the message to me. This is, just how important it is that there be food sources available to birds, especially during those really inclement weather events. Now this holly itself it's not a native holly, it's a Buford holly. It's over 60 years old and was just in the yard there at the time. And I'm really glad that we didn't cut that tree down, even though it's not a native, because look at what it's providing to those birds during that time. And that's not to say that we didn't also plant native holly trees, because we did. So it just to think about that, sometimes even if something's not a native, it can still actually be providing for wildlife. This also from our old yard, it's a beautyberry, a calocarpa, but it's actually not a native beautyberry. And to tell you the truth, I think the native beautyberries are much more beautiful, and that's all the more reason to go with the native. And of course, we all know one of the reasons why we plant native plants is because they're better adapted to our regions, so they're going to usually do better. But also insect species, the plant-eating insect species have evolved over time with specific plants that are native to our area. And for those insects to survive, over 90% of plant-eating insects are plant specific. They need certain native plants in order for the insects to live out their life cycle. And those insects are such an important food source for birds. So again, that's why we sort of go towards natives when we can, but we don't have to be exclusive. So again, this is not a native beautyberry. It was just there. The birds still adore it. The way you can tell the native one too, well, it's Calocarpa americana, but also on the native one, those little beautiful purple berries will be clinging much more closely to the stem of the plant. And that's one of the ways that you can tell the native from the non-native. So there's just, this is, I think, another terrific small tree or large shrub for most gardens. So, okay, back to winterberry. But actually, really what I wanted to say was, when you're thinking about that middle level for your garden, and you're thinking, small trees or shrubs, essentially, if the plant's name has berry in it, go for it. It's a native and it's got a berry, why not? There's red chokeberry, there's black chokeberry, there's serviceberry, there are elderberry. I mean, it's like you go on and on. To some of these plants, like the elderberry, they can sucker a little bit. You know what you're planting and know where you're planting it. I myself think elderberry are incredibly beautiful. And I would plant them everywhere, except that we don't really have the right conditions for them. But anyways, just look for the name berry. In the plant's name, look to be sure that it is like not a non-native invasive, and go for it. But yeah, after this last trip to Maine, which is I believe where I took this, I just have become like this enormous fan of the winterberry. The one thing to remember about winterberry and holly is they're dioecious, so they need a male and a female. But you don't have to have one male for each female. Like one male plant can usually help with the pollination for like 5 or 6 of the females. And often the names of the plants too with the winterberry, it'll be like Mary Poppins and Jim Dandy or something like that. I mean, so it's the names will often give away whether or not it's a male or a female. And another thing just to know about winterberry, which has become my new favorite plant, is it actually, they can get to be like 20 feet tall, but you can, there are smaller cultivars. So there's really probably room in most gardens for a winterberry. And I would like to say that one of their great allures is that you have these fantastic berries all through the winter, but the reality is they're so delicious to the birds that they will probably disappear long before winter sets in. So let's talk a little bit about rose hips. Now, somebody may correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at you, Kathy. But I'm hoping that this is the Rosa virginiana, the Virginia rose. It is possible it is a multiflora rose because it's a little bit hard to tell. So the multiflora roses, of course, are the invasive species, which we don't want. And if you have those, it's really better to remove them. But I myself haven't actually, this was taken in a park in Alexandria, but I do actually believe it's the native Virginia rose. And I think I'm actually excited. We've got areas where I think I could plant this, it will sucker, it will get larger, but it will form a really nice hedgerow. And hedgerows filled with these vitamin C rich berries can be really a wonderful thing for visiting birds. So this photo I just took very recently in our garden, and I don't know if anybody can tell what those berries are. Yeah, they're dogwood berries, exactly. So this dogwood, I have to just tell you about this dogwood. I pulled this dogwood out of a dumpster behind a hardware store about 3 years ago with the manager's permission. I took it home, I threw it in a pot. I knew we were gonna be moving, but so I didn't wanna put it in my old garden. I wanted to take it with us. But I mean, it was scraggly, it was in the dumpster, it was there for a reason, it wasn't looking that good. We brought it out to our new property last year and I plunked it in the garden and it didn't die. And this spring it put on those beautiful white flowers and then it put on these hips, actually had a fair number of the berries. And when this little family, it was a family of the bluebirds, alighted a few weeks ago and ate every berry off the tree, I was just so thrilled. I mean, I was like, that was absolutely worth the effort to dive into that dumpster. So this is a crab apple, delicately held by the stem, by the crow. So crab apples are another really beautiful small tree for that will fit into a lot of gardens. And crab apples, that is to really talk about like the whole like 4 seasons of beauty. You get the spring blossoms, the summer shade of the tree, the autumn fruit, which can really last into the winter, and then beautiful fall color as well. So crab apples, I think, are pretty terrific. And one thing I noticed when I was up in Maine, I saw a bunch of little warblers messing around in a crabapple tree. And I'm like, what are these little tiny birds doing with these kind of larger crab apples? And they were actually attracted to the insects that were feeding off of the rotted fruit on the tree. So like, talk about like life cycle, like it's just, you're kind of feeding in ways that you never even possibly like thought about. This is more of an ornamental crabapple on a cedar waxwing, and of course cedar waxwings are so notorious for their appetites. They just go for it, which I adore. So this is a cherry tree. I took this photograph up in Canada in a park. And it was cherry blossom season. Everybody's down below taking their selfies and photographing each other under the cherry blossoms. And all I could do was look up into the branches and see this little flock of Baltimore Orioles plucking the blossoms off of the flowers so that they could get into the nectar. And that is what they were going for. They're actually drinking the nectar out of these cherry trees. So again, what a wonderful small tree for your garden. Gorgeous flowers in the spring, shelter and shade during the summer, fruit in the fall, depending on what kind of cherry tree, and then the autumn color, and then just winter structure, which is really kind of nice, just those bare branches. So, yeah, sometimes you just never really know how a tree is going to serve wildlife, and just by observing, we can learn a lot. So here, a blackpoll warbler and an eastern red cedar, and this is actually, it's very cropped, but, and I kind of wish it was eating the berries. We were just talking about that. One thing I think myself, because we just bought a piece of land that's got a lot of red cedar on it, I just feel like they're this really undervalued tree. I love these cedars. They're very hardy, they're deer resistant. The females put on these beautiful blue berries, which are really appreciated by all sorts of wildlife throughout the year. So I think that myself, I mean, these get to be like 50 to 80 feet tall, so you wouldn't want one too near the house, but evergreens are really terrific because of that winter shelter that they'll give to animals. And like I said, these blueberries are great. And one little thing that I just learned when I was like doing a little bit of research for this is that the cedar waxwings actually got the cedar in their name because they'd like to devour the berries from the eastern red cedar. So now we'll talk a little bit about those larger trees. And of course, gotta talk about the oak tree, right? Because it's a keystone species. We're probably all familiar with Doug Tallamy and his work. So if you have space for something like an oak tree, yeah, we should all be planting them. In fact, we've probably planted at least 10 on our property since we moved in. I don't think I've gotten carried away. I mean, I think these are really great trees. But one thing, be a little bit careful about the types that you pick out, because some I think are a little more drought tolerant and possibly a little bit, which is gonna set them up a little bit more for climate change events. So you might just want to focus a little bit, the white oaks, the bur oaks and the chestnut oaks are supposed to be a little bit more drought tolerant. So if you're gonna plant an oak tree, think about that. I myself would not plant an oak tree very close to my house. I'm really nervous about high winds, violent windstorms knocking branches or trees over onto a house. So if you're gonna plant an oak tree, you really wanna have the space to do that. And you don't wanna plant it on your neighbor's property line. I mean, you just have to be respectful of the height and girth that these trees become. But just to say oak trees, I mean, even more than like, the fact that like it's a place for birds to nest and they're filled with acorns that feed wildlife. They are also the host plants to, they say, to over 500 species of insects, which are, it's great for the insects to have those host trees, whether they're under the bark or eating the leaves, but it's also really, really great for the birds that can rely upon those insects all year round, but especially during nesting season. And I believe this blue jay, I don't even think it's just two, I think there were actually 3 acorns in its beak when I took this picture. So now we'll get down to the shrubby perennial layer of the garden. The goldfinch, of course, the finches, they just love, you're gonna see a lot of goldfinch because they just love the seeds from the flowers. This is an echinacea coneflower, and they look great. They look great when they're in bloom, they look terrific. But once they've gone to seed, they're especially attractive to the finches. And I like to leave, well, a lot of people know it's really beneficial to leave the stalks all through the winter if you can. There's can be lingering seeds in there, but also those hollow stalks are places for insects to hibernate and lay their eggs. And those insects and their eggs can actually be a food source during the winter to birds who are trying to just get some fat into their diet during the lean months. So this plant, I don't know if anybody knows this plant, it's Verbena bonariensis. It is one of my favorite garden plants. It is not a native. It self-seeds pretty freely, but it's pretty easy to pull up. I just adore it. It's very airy in my borders. And it's deer resistant, which for me is like huge. But it's really the fact that the pollinators adore it and the goldfinch really, really love it. In fact, when this starts blooming in June, July, every time I look out onto the plant, there's a goldfinch on it. They just adore it. And for that reason, I really adore it. And actually, I still have Verbena bonariensis blooming in my garden in November. So again, I'm not saying if you want to go all native, absolutely, this is not a native and it does kind of freely self-seed. I don't think it's problematic in any way. And I like to have it in my garden. So these are Monarda. So this is bee balm. And I actually took this photo out at Antietam in those beautiful naturalized meadows that they've recently put in, like in the last 4 years out there. Yeah, that meadow is just bursting with goldfinch there's so much for them to feed off of, all of those beautiful native plants, including this native Monarda. And for me, the Monarda, like we should all be growing this in our garden. The bee balm is so beautiful. But really, like, look how abstract and structural that seed head is. I mean, that looks really wonderful for winter interest in the garden. It's just terrific all year round. And again, a really important, valuable source of seeds for the birds. So not all, I mean, so now let's talk a little bit about annuals. And I have just, within the last couple of years, but especially this year, learned to love zinnias. I never realized how easy they were to grow from seed and how quickly they grew. I had never grown them before, but they grow really fast. And I don't know about your experience, but I found them to be pretty deer resistant. Yeah, which is another huge plus for me. And this flower, I mean, this is still in full bloom, and the goldfinch, and there were other species of birds as well, are already getting to ripe seeds in here and plucking them off, which is just super delightful to watch. So yeah, I'm like a big fan of zinnias, and will continue to plant those in my garden for lots of reasons. Of course, I mean, sunflowers are the ultimate food source to, of an annual to plant in your garden for the birds. I think that in my experience, it's if you can just get them above the deer browse line, just protect them until they're tall enough, then they can be pretty resistant to the deer. I mean, the deer aren't necessarily gonna bite off those flower heads. You just have to get them tall enough to get the flower. I like to go a lot to McKee Besher in Poolesville, Maryland, where they plant huge sunflower fields, and they have lots of deer there. But the sunflowers fields are still like in full bloom and very tall. So it's just about getting the sunflowers up tall enough, and yeah, just a joy to watch. So of course, the only thing better than a sunflower is a really, really big sunflower. I took this photo out in California, and this gigantic sunflower seed head, just, I mean, there aren't dozens, there aren't hundreds, there are thousands of sunflower seeds on that head. So yeah, let's all plant sunflowers. I think they're, what a cool structural thing for the garden. Now we can talk a little bit about nectar sources. So again, the bee balm and the monarda, I definitely found that, like, of all of the things in my garden, the ruby-throated hummingbirds were going most to the monarda more than any other species. So it's a native, like, we should just all have that in our garden. I think they're great. I mean, they're deer resistant. I think they're even groundhog resistant. And so here again, oh, the zinnia. I mean, it's like those zinnias, they're pulling their weight in the garden. I just love how that hummingbird is just standing on the petals, taking in the nectar. So these are the salvia. And so with salvia, so that's more or less, it's not a native, and it's more or less just an annual most of the time. I do find that I can take cuttings from it pretty easily and try to overwinter them. But those are just another terrific nectar source for pollinators as well as the hummingbirds. And even if you don't have a garden, if you just have a deck, you could have a large pot and put some bee balm and some salvia in there and maybe some mountain mint, and you actually just have like this little feeding station right there. So there's lots of ways I feel I like to include salvia, even though it's not a native in my borders. Now this is cardinal flower. That is a native. Hummingbirds absolutely adore it. It's a short-lived perennial. And one of the things I think that you need to do with the cardinal flower, just because it is pretty short-lived, I almost think of it like a biennial foxglove kind of thing. But one thing that you can do to get it to keep coming back is I like to leave some bare, I mulch very heavily all through all my borders, but around cardinal flowers, I'll keep the mulch away, have some bare earth, and let the seeds fall onto the bare earth. They need winter stratification, and then in the next spring, I'll have a new crop of little cardinal flowers coming up. And that first year, they'll just form a rosette. And then in the second year, they'll actually come full up and bloom and let the process repeat. So this is one of the plants in my garden where I'll actually leave a bare bit of earth there to encourage that self-seeding. So trumpet flowers, let's just talk about vines, especially native vines that feed all sorts of pollinators, but the hummingbirds, because who doesn't love the hummingbirds? So this is the native coral honeysuckle vine. And there's no reason to go with the non-native ones, because the native ones are so beautiful. Like, why, default to the native, when you can default to the native. These can get very big and vigorous. They take a few years to get their feet before they'll start blooming and putting on growth. But once they've got their feet, they'll grow pretty vigorously, and they'll need a pretty strong support, a trellis or a very strong fence. But the honeysuckle will actually, it will bloom. Peggy's got some blooming right now. It blooms into November. This will keep blooming long after the hummingbirds themselves have gone south for the winter. So this is if you've got the space for a honeysuckle vine, I would go with that. There's other ones. There's the trumpet vines, native. Oh, so aggressive. I wouldn't put a trumpet vine myself in my garden because it really is aggressive and it really spreads around. But if you've got a tree out in your yard, kind of far away from other things, I think it could be really fun to have a trumpet vine scamper up there and provide all of those nectar sources. Passion flowers also are a native. Maypop, I think, is another word for it. It's incarnata, passion flower, incarnata, whatever it is. But the passion flowers are so beautiful. They're native. Those are another one that are aggressive and they sucker, but they are so cool, and they actually produce edible passion flower fruit. And the hummingbirds really love them. So that's another really fun native vine. So we'll just talk real quickly just about if for whatever reason you choose to put out feeders. We just have to be real. I myself rarely will put out a hummingbird feeder, and mostly it's because there's just too much maintenance for me. When the weather temps are over 80 degrees, you really need to be changing that water every couple of days. And that's a big commitment, I think. It's just, even if there's still food in the feeder, it needs to be changed out because of mold and bacteria that can grow in that sugary water. Of course, we never ever use honey for the hummingbirds, and we never use brown sugar. It's a very simple mixture of 1 part sugar to 4 parts water, and you can mix up a big batch of it and keep it in the fridge, and that can help you keep up with that maintenance of changing it every few days when the weather is warm. So now we can talk about winter and what happens during the winter in our gardens. Let's hope that we've got berrying bushes that are possibly helping the birds. If we've got old stems in our gardens that are laden with insects, that can be a food source. But yeah, sometimes in the winter, when it's really, really brutal out, I'll put out a feeder for the birds, just because I feel like, you know, when it's really brutal, I feel like it's helping, and it's something that I'm enjoying. A few things about the feeders though that are really important. I mean, when you've got, first of all, a feeder needs to be cleaned out like every couple of weeks. You need to be able to dismantle that feeder and really thoroughly clean it. Never ever have wet moldy seed in there, because you're going to be causing problems. Feeders will bring together a whole bunch of species of birds that wouldn't necessarily normally be all together, and it can really be a disease spreading event if you've got sick birds. So if you put up feeders, if you ever see a sick bird, especially the conjunctivitis that the finches get, take that feeder down. That's really important, because you're just going to be spreading disease. And another thing about feeders is the birds will be dropping seed on the ground, but they'll also be pooping while they're eating. So, and then birds will come and like pick up the seeds off the ground, and those seeds are contaminated. So they clean underneath the feeder if you put it out, or move the feeder around the garden to different areas, so you're not getting disease building up underneath where that feeder and the seed and the poop are dropping. And actually, if you use a feeder, I really love this feeder. It's called a squirrel buster. And I like it for a lot of reasons. It really does keep the squirrels off. And it's super easy to disassemble and to clean really thoroughly. I think it's the Droll Yankee makes this, and excellent customer service, and they'll replace broken parts. So if you're gonna put up a feeder, I like this one. Just be sure you get a feeder that's easy to take apart and maybe deters visitors. So yeah, like when we're creating these bird-friendly gardens, other people find it friendly too. Other creatures find it friendly. And that's just, I think it's something we have to recognize. And here a raccoon going for a native persimmon. We're planting fruit trees for the birds, and it's going to attract other visitors as well. This is a Cooper's hawk, and actually the reason this photo, if this is not a captive bird, the reason this is such an incredible close-up is because it landed on our deck while we were grilling chicken. And this Cooper hawk lived in the neighborhood, and yes, it would occasionally come and take out birds from the yard, because that's what Cooper hawks do. And I recognize that, and it's, for me, that is that cycle. It's a natural circle, it's a natural cycle. This also, you know, you've got a large bird population in your yard, and you're going to be attracting the predators to those birds. And unfortunately, this particular rat snake took out more than one nest in my yard. And yeah, this is, you know, all God's creatures have a place in the choir, and apparently they all have a place in my yard. We've got them all, and I'm prepared for that, and actually I welcome it. So now let's talk about water, the final thing, or second thing we need to think about in the garden. So I took this photo at a winery in Napa, where everybody was roaming around with wine looking for the bathroom, and there was this Greek goddess statue, fountain with water flowing down her, and this incredible little Anna's hummingbird nestling on her breast while, you know, taking a bath, and nobody even noticed. And I was like, what is wrong with these people? Like, this incredible thing is happening right here. And it really was just delightful to see. But of course, the hummingbird was attracted to the flowing water, to have a cooling bath, one of my favorite things. So, and this also was from out in Napa, so it's a different species of chickadee than we have here. And this is again a flowing fountain. There's the sound of trickling water and that motion of the water. It attracted all sorts of birds. This was another one of our favorite ones there. So, and this actually is just my backyard. So where we are now, I don't have a pond or anything. I mean, we've only been there a year, so we'll see whether or not we're gonna put in a pond. Possibly not because of all the deer. But so I needed a water source, so I just went to Lowe's and I bought a very simple little $40 bird bath. It's probably 18 inches by 18 inches and no more than 3 inches deep in the center. I put this bird bath up, and instantly the birds were there. I mean, and the deer, but instantly the birds were there. And the great thing about this bird bath, the thing I really like about it, and the thing to think about bird baths, is you really need to change that water often. And that's why, it's because you're gonna get a whole bunch of birds in there, and they're doing all sorts of things in that water, they're just drinking and taking a bath. So anyways, the bird baths really need to be cleaned out very regularly. So you wanna site them in a place where you have easy access to the water that you're gonna need to clean them, and also have a bird bath that's easy to dump the water out. We had a bird bath in our last house, it was just enormous, and I never could get all the water out, it was really, really difficult to keep it clean. So I think that something that's shallow, birds need shallow water to bathe in, not something deep, and something that's easy to clean with easy access to fresh water, and you'll want to clean them like every few days. This was our old house, and this is a little wildlife pond I put in. This was so easy to put in, I can't even tell you, it probably took me like not even a couple of hours just to dig it out. It's probably 5 feet long by 2.5 feet wide, and it was just super simple. The deepest part is probably 1.5 feet deep, and I laid in a flexible plastic liner. If you put in a wildlife pond, I do not like rigid pond liners, the rigid kind that you put in, because they're too steep. Wildlife falls in there and it can't get out. You really need a little beach, a little landing area for the wildlife to get in and get back out. And even in this little pond, I saw a box turtle had fallen in, it was drinking and it fell in, and it was swimming and swimming and swimming, and I kind of waited to see if it would find the beach, and it found the beach and it crawled out. So it was this end of the pond is like the little beach area, and there were also little sticks that I laid across there, just to give wildlife a chance, a place to climb out. I mean, if you can do a little wildlife pond, it's just the best thing you can do for your garden. You're gonna get the frogs and the tadpoles and salamanders and all sorts of other things. But again, if not, then just a bird bath is a good thing too. And also, I did just use a very cheap solar paneled pump for recirculating that water. And it was enough. You can see the water spilling out of the little bamboo faucet that I've got in the back there. And just that motion of water was enough to keep it from freezing over the winter. So it's something else to think about if you do put in a little pond. And this is a robin actually bathing in that pond. And this is a little chipping sparrow bathing in a shallow puddle. I just included this because I took this out at Blandy this summer when it was over 90 degrees. It was such a hot day. I do not know what I was doing out there. And I saw this little chipping sparrow in this puddle of water cooling off. I don't think it was drinking. I think it was just trying to cool down, and I wanted to jump in there too. And it just really did bring home for me the fact that, like, yeah, I mean, birds need to cool off just like we need to cool off. So providing fresh water for them to do that can be a great thing in your garden. This is in our old house, and this is that bird bath that I said was so difficult to clean out. You can just see how massive that is. I mean, it was really a nightmare, but it was really good for the purpose of in the wintertime. It was so thick. I would just go out in the morning. I don't have a heater in here. You can put heaters in bird baths. I would actually just go out in the morning and dump a bucket of hot water from the sink over there, and it was enough to keep that water fresh and open, usually during the whole day, and then it would freeze up again overnight. So now we can talk about nesting. How am I doing for time? Fine, okay. So we'll talk about nesting. This is a house wren, and it's in a nesting gourd. We'll talk about different things you can do for nesting birds. So this is a chickadee in another type of a nesting ball. This particular nesting ball, it's meant for wrens and chickadees. So the opening is only 1.25 inch big. And it's really important if you're gonna put up nesting boxes to think about who you want to be bringing in or who you're providing that nest for. House sparrows will nest in boxes or cavities where the opening is 1.5 inches or bigger. They won't nest in something this small. These are really just when those really small openings are really great for the smaller birds. Bluebird boxes, this is taken out west, so these are actually western bluebirds. Yeah, we put up bluebird boxes. I put up 3 bluebird boxes this past spring. And when I did it, I put in, all of my bluebird boxes are on poles about 5 feet off the ground. And they all have baffles to prevent predators. So you can get raccoons, you can get snakes, see what are some of them, squirrels. You know, all of these things can predate in a nesting box. So putting up a baffle is really an important thing. And of course, this is the day I put this bluebird box up. This is who came to check it out. No, actually, I think he was just landing there, but I thought it was a funny photo. But this is another one of the nesting boxes I put up. This is a house wren. About a week before this house wren started and its mate started building this nest, there were tree sparrows that were, or tree swallows nesting in this particular box. They had fully fledged their young. I cleaned out the box and the house wrens moved in. This is a tree swallow at Blandy. It had moved into a box that had previously been occupied by bluebirds. And once the bluebirds had fledged and the box was cleaned out, they moved in. So it can be a lot of kind of musical chairs. I just thought this was so funny. This is a kestrel nesting box that I put up, you know, with great expectations. And everybody and his brother had to come and check out the real estate. And I didn't include a photo, but even the house wren came and checked this out as a possible nesting site, which I just thought was hysterical. So not all birds are cavity nesters. Some of them will build their own, like this robin, and this was actually from our old house, and she actually had taken up some leaf litter from the yard and was dipping it in the mud, in the puddles around the pond. And that's another nice thing about the pond, is you've got that muddy puddle, because robins, they need the mud to form their nests. Yeah, this illustrates the point really well. I mean, this is literally like just 10 feet from the pond, she built that nest. And so leaving nesting materials around your yard, what I would do in the spring, you know, around February, I would start cutting down the vegetative matter, the dried vegetative matter. And instead of composting it, I would tuck it under in the backs of borders, underneath evergreens. I mean, I kept the garden looking really tidy, but you can tuck away this sort of dried vegetative matter, and it can serve all sorts of, it's mulching your plants, but it's also giving insects a place to live and to breed. And it's providing nesting materials as well for birds, and not just birds. And this, I love this picture. So this is a chipping sparrow, and I'm pretty sure this is raccoon fur. So some birds actually want fur for their nests, to line their nests. I took this out of the Antietam, and I thought to myself, now where did that little chipping sparrow get that raccoon fur? Possibly roadkill, and I'm not suggesting that we put roadkill in our gardens for the birds, but you can create these nesting balls. I used to make these, I just love them. I would just pick up these rattan balls on the internet, and I got free alpaca from an alpaca farm, the alpaca fur, and you just dump that in there in the spring, and I gave them to all my friends, and we all had great success attracting birds. So the tufted titmice, the chickadees, and the goldfinch would all come to the nesting balls and pull out fur. If you do make nesting balls, and I mean, I encourage it. I think that they can be really helpful to birds, you know, especially depending on just how much natural material you've got around for them to create their nests. Just never use yarn, because you can end up with entanglement. That's like, just don't do that. And I would also advise not using human hair or pet hair, because, you know, sometimes we've got flea medications and things like that on our pets. So it's really better to just go with, this is wool. Mount Vernon had given me some of their fleece from their sheep, and I used it to stuff that particular nesting ball. So this picture, I think, is so important, and the reason is because this is our old garden, and it's a webworm that was on our native persimmon tree, and you know, it didn't look that great. And I looked at the tree, I'm like, oh, there's this like webby thing on part of it on that branch, and it doesn't look all that terrific. But I wanted to walk the talk, and I didn't want to just go out there and cut that branch off and burn it. I wanted to find out what was really happening. And so I did some research, and I'm like, okay, it's a native webworm. I don't see that it's gonna destroy the tree. I'm just gonna leave that and see what happens. I'm gonna let this play out and observe it. When that goldfinch flew to the tree, I was out there with my camera. I'm like, Eureka, it's going to go eat a webworm, and I'm going to prove that it was good to leave that web nest up there. No, it didn't go for the worms. It went for the webbing for its nest. And I'm like, oh, it's even better. So I think this really speaks to the fact that sometimes we can take a step back and not just have that knee-jerk reaction that every time we see a bug or a spider web, you know, that we need to remove it. They often can be playing an important role that we may not have considered. And I don't know if you know, but the blue-gray gnatcatchers, they actually build their nests with lichen and spider webs, which are like, you know, one of nature's great tiny treasures. So another reason to be leaving the spider webs in your garden. This, my husband's in the audience and he knows what this is. So yeah, the mourning dove, I don't know why, like she built her nest in this Tupperware container underneath the deck, right where my husband's workshop was. And we had a conversation, my husband and I, not me and the mourning dove. And, you know, I said, I think it's only gonna take about 6 weeks for this whole thing to play itself out. let's not disturb her. And so we left her in there, and now and then, we would have to go, we kind of all worked with each other. We'd have to go and retrieve some tools or something, but we would just do it slowly and respectfully, and she never actually like flew away or really seemed to be that upset. The truth is, our presence sometimes, birds will nest in our proximity because we're helping to keep away predators, the larger predators that they couldn't, like the foxes or the raccoons or the snakes. So sometimes our proximity can be a good thing. I just love this photo. So this cardinal built her nest in a metal sculpture that I was storing in our open carport on top of a shelving unit this past summer. And when I looked at the top of the shelving unit and looked inside the sculpture and saw some twigs, I thought, that is not happening. And it happened. She built her nest in there, and they raised 2 babies in this metal sculpture in our open carport, which was incredible. And this Carolina wren, in that same carport at the same time, raised 2 broods of babies out of a stack of clay pots that were piled up in a corner of the carport. So we were walking past this multiple times a day. They were tolerating our proximity because we were providing, basically some protection, and we were being just respectful of their space at the same time. But watching all those babies fledge, get the little, it's a lot of anxiety on my part and, just worrying about them, but they all make it out there into the world. So when it's possible, if you can leave dead snags on your property where it's safe to do so, that can be a great thing for some of the cavity dwelling birds, the cavity nesting birds. And but again, that's it's pretty special. You gotta have a dead tree, and it's gotta be in a place that's not gonna fall on your property, on your house, or on your kids, or on your neighbors. But when possible, that's great. And it's not just because the snags are great places for birds to nest, it's also because there's so many insects are attracted to that dying wood, and those are great food sources for birds. And this is a northern flicker that had nested in this cavity, which was like incredible to watch it coming and going, feeding its young. And maybe someday, if one's lucky enough, you'll even get like a screech owl and a snag. That's my dream event. And yeah, it's not only birds that are attracted to those hollow cavities. Lots of wildlife can put it to good use. I photographed these guys out at the winery at Antietam. They were hysterical. There were 3 of them popping in and out of all of the holes in that dead tree. So now let's talk about feeding the young, because oh my gosh, what a relentless job. And yeah, so a bird-friendly garden is a bug-friendly garden, because I don't know, Doug Tallamy threw out numbers like a chickadee will feed 5,000 caterpillars to like each of its young, as it's growing from in the nest. So they need a whole lot of bugs. Avoid pesticide use. I mean, that's what, if you're a bird-friendly garden, you're not using pesticides, because if you're using pesticides, you're destroying the food that those birds need to raise their young. And I just want to tell you a story about these house wrens, because they were so funny. As soon as they fledged, I would say the day after they fledged, I was hearing a peeping in the house, and I could not figure out where it was coming from. It was just the craziest sound. And I'm like, is an alarm going off? And we looked behind a picture, and behind it was one of these little house wrens. It took its name literally, and it went down the chimney into the house. It was in a day after fledging. It was just ridiculous. So we rounded it up and managed to get it back out there with its family. I love this picture too. So when we talk about like birds feeding insects to their young, yes, this is a northern mockingbird shoving a cicada down the throat of its fledgling. I thought I was gonna have to give that young one the Heimlich maneuver. It was hysterical. And I took this photo out of Antietam, and yeah, it was incredible to see this, all of the insects that this field sparrow were picking up, and you knew she was taking them all back to her young to feed them. And you've got 3, 4, 5 little babies they're eating. You can't just show up with one caterpillar. You've got to show up with a mouth filled with insects to feed all of those hungry birds. So yeah, for me, this is like, I look at this picture and honestly, like, it kind of hurts my heart a little bit. And to tell you the truth, when spring comes around, I mean, I honestly have a bit of anxiety, because there's all of these young creatures coming into the world, and they're all so vulnerable. And I've seen just plenty of nests predated by the crows and the jays and the raccoons and the squirrels. I mean, it's like the snakes. It's like unending just how vulnerable this new life is. So everything that we can do to keep them safe, I think is a good thing. And that brings me just to the topic, which we just have to cover in one slide, is that, each year, this, it's more than 1 billion birds each year are killed by outdoor cats. And, this is Felix, he is our benevolent overlord, and, he's been with us for 10 years now. He was a feral rescue from the streets of Baltimore, and he spent the past 10 years in the lap of luxury, and he wants you to know that life as an indoor cat is pretty good. And also just talking about, kind of walking the talk, just last week, the whole back of our house is all windows, and just last week, it was probably the 12th or more window strike that we'd had since we've moved in the last year. And, it was a dark-eyed junco, and I was like, this is just enough, like, you go out there and you pick up this warm but dead body, and it's like, I gotta do something. So I contacted Peggy and I got the name of this company, the window collision tape, and it was very fiddly to put up the tape, but I did it over a course of a few hours, and I'm getting used to looking through the dots, but it's really worth it to think that I'm not gonna be, sort of complacent about my role in bird safety. So with that, I would just like to say that the next time you're moving a mountain of mulch or chiseling out a hole to plant another tree in the hard earth, look around, look for that flash of the feathers and the color, listen to their song, and know that when you make a garden, you make a difference. So with that, I say thank you. I don't know if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes,
You said early in the presentation about frequently cleaning out the bird feeders. What is your recommended technique for cleaning a bird feeder?
well, that particular bird feeder that I showed you, that's my only experience with one, is that squirrel buster. By, I
It's just
think it's,
basically wire, right?
no, the whole thing, oh my gosh, and it comes apart very easily. You just like unscrew the bottom and this tube falls out, and they're just very easy to clean. I mean, I guess it just depends on the feeder, but you could also just take a high power, a garden hose on jet stream and blow it all out. But they also say to use like a little bit of soapy water and maybe a little bit of bleach as well. And these aren't my recommendations. It's just what I've read, like from Audubon, and other, bird advocacy groups that just talk about, like every couple of weeks. But if there's wet seed in there, more frequently, and if there's any sign of disease in any of the birds coming to the feeder, take it down completely.
So looking at the window tape, how far apart were those dots?
Every they say every 2 inches.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was kind of fiddly to put that up. But and that's just what they say to do. And so, I mean, I think you can experiment with different things and see how it works for you, depending on, oh, go ahead, Peggy.
Did you buy the strips?
Mhm.
So you can buy a film as well, that's a larger piece.
Why didn't you tell me that, Peggy?
So you can get larger pieces of film that you can put up that have the dots, and it is 2 inches. If you've got hummingbirds, it needs to be at least 2 inches apart. No farther than 2 inches apart, or they'll think they can fly through.
Yeah. Well, I wish I'd known about the film. No, but it was still okay. I mean, it still wasn't bad.
It's also, we've got some at the Shepherdstown Public Library, if you wanna go see what it looks like inside there.
Yeah. And if you don't wanna buy the stuff or fiddle with the stickiness, at Cool Spring, what we've done, and it has worked, so far, is, every 2 inches, I use a little like, chalk marker on the outside of the window.
Right.
And drew a little circle. So it doesn't look precisely as neat as a dot and a film, but, yeah, we haven't had a bird strike since we did that, so.
That's good. Yeah.
I asked because I've got like the horizontal lines on my windows, but they're much more than 2 inches apart.
Are you getting bird strikes?
No.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, that's one thing. I mean,
I'm
if
also
you're not.
planning to plant a lot of these like bird attractive plants, so.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, well, you know what, it's one of those things, I mean, if you aren't getting any bird strikes, like if you have shears in your windows, you're probably not gonna get bird strikes, so it just really depends on your windows and where you are and kind of what's going on, but we were experiencing more than I could comment, so.
There are some other systems. You can hang strings and, one system I used, because I got a bird strike and I couldn't stand it. So I took a glass pen and drew lines on the window,
Yeah.
which you then have to scrape off, but
Mhm.
it worked.
Yeah, I think we can just experiment with, there's lots of stuff online and, just experiment, see what works. Go ahead.
I was just gonna throw out there that while you think of oaks as a big towering forestry, there's other different sizes as well, something like a post oak is kind of a medium-sized tree, maybe like 40 feet tall, which is still a big tree. But then there's a couple of harder to find varieties, a dwarf chinkapin oak and a bare oak. And both of those top out between 5 and like 12 feet, so they're more of the small tree size, but they have the same sort of, oomph that an oak can bring to to your property.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is that is great advice. Yeah, there's a lot that I don't know about trees for sure. So that's great to hear, because I really feel like a garden needs structure, and it's the larger and then that medium layer and then the lower layer, and then actually just the earth itself is also a place that's providing food for the birds, in terms of like the insects that are hibernating in the soil. So yeah, thank you.
I think a lot of people buy bird baths that they like instead of, something that the birds will like. It may not be as pretty, but if the birds love it, that's what you should have.
Yeah, I think at the end of
And if it's the same, the right
the right depth.
shape and everything, you don't need a rock.
No, that's right.
If you put a rock in, that means it's a wrong shape to begin with.
You're totally right. No, you're really right. And I think bird baths really deserve a lot of consideration, because if they're the wrong kind of bird bath, you can't keep them
Yeah.
clean enough for it to be healthy for the birds to be in there. So, yeah.
And I think for the hummingbird feeders, there again, people buy something that's pretty, and it's totally,
You are that is so,
Yeah.
that was gonna be a point I was gonna make. You are absolutely right. I was actually gonna bring in the kind of hummingbird feeder that I've used in the past, and it's that really simple dish with the red top, and just the top just pops off. It is so simple to keep clean.
Yeah.
But these beautiful glass vases with the little narrow spouts, how on earth do you clean that out? You
Right.
can't really do it. So I completely
yeah.
Yeah, and I just hate that, because you like so much junk online.
I know.
Like encouraging people to do all these bird
A
friendly
neighbor
things.
of
that aren't
mine, she
bird
had an interesting one, was made out of pottery but I said, how much food do you put in there? And she said, oh, I put, it was like 2 cups.
friendly.
And I thought, why? Because the holes, the base, the holes were too high up. So that the whole thing was not
Shocking.
with any thought
Yeah.
of how hummingbirds feed.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, all we can do is gently
Fortunately, she
educate.
didn't hang it because it was a pain to clean and, so.
I thought you were gonna say because you accidentally knocked it off her porch. Yeah, I guess that's all kind of does get to this thing too of just like treating people with grace, that a lot of people really is just about education. Gentle education. So I jumped to judgment, but yeah, I think gentle education is the way to go. So if that's it, I don't know if anyone has any more questions. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming tonight. Feel free to have some more tea or what have you, some snacks. And if you are not on our email list, at our PBS table, there should be a sign up sheet so you can get our heads up, which is every 2 weeks or so. Comes out with upcoming events and information and things like that. So please join us again and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like we've got a nice audience tonight. When you feel the audience.
Thank you, Laurel.
Love it. Yeah, thank you, Laurel. Thanks.